Hello and welcome to the 6 months to six figures series of the W Your Freelancing podcast. I'm your host, Zach Swinehart, here with Brad. And in this series, you follow a specific freelancer, in this case, Brad, as we coach them from early stages to earning a six-figure annual income freelancing, which breaks down to $8,333 a month. The challenge being to see how quickly we can get Brad there, ideally within 6 months. So in this series, I connect with Brad every week or two, and it follows pretty much the same format as the one-on-one coaching in the DYF Accelerator community. So if you're listening and you want to check that out and get coaching just like this, you can learn more at dyf.link/DYFA. So let's dive into the interview, because today the interview is a wild one. Brad, I hear through the grapevine, aka the pre-interview, that you've got some updates and news for us.
Yeah, so my assignment last week was just dive in and try to do as good a job as I could for this client. And that's what I did. I didn't do anything other than just work for the client during the day and then like decompress at night. I mean, it was a lot. But it was awesome. I really like this company. I like the product. I like the job of the affiliate manager stuff. It's some other opportunities to do marketing work immediately opened up. All these skills I've built over the years were suddenly just like, boom. Oh yeah, you could do that and that. Yeah, so that was just my pure focus. And I sort of accidentally perhaps brought a big relationship to the business as an affiliate, just through my other memberships and groups and stuff. So anyways, the CEO expressed yesterday that he might be interested. He asked me if I was interested in joining full-time as an employee. And I was kind of thinking about it last week because he had said a couple things that made me think he might ask. And my reply was, I would consider it, but just to let you know, like, here's where I want to go long term. I want to be an entrepreneur. And one of the benefits of working for this company is this guy's an amazing entrepreneur, very experienced, and I love having our like daily chats because I'm just like downloading business experience into my brain. So I shared that with him, and I said I would ultimately like to have a content business and all this stuff. But in the short term, I don't really want to work. I don't need to like work for other clients as an affiliate manager. I'm really liking working for your company, and your team is awesome and everything. So he said that, yeah, he's been really happy with my work so far and thinks that now that I'm starting to like represent their brand and their company and a little bit, he thought it would be a good idea for us to make a commitment. And what he came back with was, after I said all that stuff, which was very authentic, and I felt like that's what I needed to express, and not pretend like I'm looking to be like a company man, long term. But he said, well, how about, maybe there's something where, you work with us for a year or two and, you help us do X, Y, and Z, and we offer all these cool things that we offer our employees, and then you can see how you feel after that. And that's kind of where we left it. I threw out some numbers as to what I was hoping to make generally as a freelancer in this affiliate manager role, having multiple clients. And then he said he was going to go talk to his CFO. And so that's where we are today. Like, probably after I get off this call, my next call today will be with him, and we'll probably talk about it. So I wanted to hear Zach's thoughts on, what happens when you're a freelancer and you get offered a job, because, I started off wanting to be a freelancer because of the upsides of freelancing, independence and all that stuff. But it's not like I've been slaving away in a corporate job for 10 years either. Like, yep. I've been very independent most of my career. So I've had that in spades. So that's where I'm at, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Zach?
Cool. Happy to share them. And I would say, I would like to start with, first off, like, congrats, because that's so awesome. The fact that they want to bring you in that capacity is like the best testimonial you could get about your performance so far. So that is so awesome. I was trying to clap for Maya in the previous episode, but I don't want to, you're a video guy, so you know why I can't, but I'm just going to say clap, 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 clap. But not make the mic have these loud popping sounds. So that's awesome. Go you, Air 5 for that. Fucking sick.
Thank you.
I have a lot of thoughts here. So my biggest thought is that everyone listening can probably relate. There's this whole misnomer with freelancing. Like, all of us get into this because we want the freedom and we want the flexibility, but that's generally, unless you're coming with some existing audience, that is not what you get. When you start freelancing, you get exactly what you've experienced so far, which is a bunch of people who give zero fucks about you, and you have to claw your way into every single client relationship in a commoditized way for a long, long time. So in the end, the most freelancers make less than they would from a job and have to work more doing it. And in my opinion, the biggest thing that like kills freelancers' success is desperation from being broke. And I know you can relate because we've been talking about Ubering and stuff. So if you have ever read my story on the DYF site, and if you haven't, I think the link is like wfreelancing.com/about/Zach with an H. I have my whole timeline there. I think you might find it interesting, especially as you're about to take this next step. For me, taking a day job was the thing that allowed me to grow my business the right way. Because what happened is I started my business when I was in college. I dropped out of college to do my business full time. And I like scraped my way along getting clients on Craigslist. I think my first websites, I built them for like $300 or $400 for like a whole website. And I just did that for like a really long time. I later hired employees, racked up this gigantic $20,000 tax bill because I was only making enough money to pay my employees and scrape by with my own bills. But you're supposed to also like apparently withhold money from what you pay them and then pay the government for that. But I was spending that on my bills. So I just got really screwed from my financial decisions there. It was a big milestone when I like paid that down. And anyway, I won't digress there. But what happened with that is when I was running that business, the crappy commoditized one, I hated my work, hated my clients. I was burnt out. I overdrafted regularly. I come from a middle-class family. I'm steeped in white privilege. So my parents bailed me out. Like there were a couple of months where I couldn't afford my rent. And I remember my mom transferred me money and I felt so much shame that I couldn't fucking hack it. But whatever. Everyone has those times in their path. And once that happened, like a few times I was like, all right, something's got to change. I can't keep doing this. I'm just going to get a fucking job. And I like got a dev job. And I think I was making like more money than I ever made in my business, even though my top line revenue in the business prior to that was like $100,000 a year. My take home was like barely enough to afford my life in Greeley, Colorado, which if you don't know anything about Greeley, Colorado, I'll just tell you, Greeley is not the most expensive part of Colorado. If you've ever seen South Park, they have some things to say about Greeley. And the job was great. It was great from a learning perspective. It was great from a money perspective and stability perspective. Those are the main ones. It sucked in other ways, but it really wasn't so bad. And I would say that the biggest, like I have a lot of thoughts for this position you're in. I'm really excited for you, by the way. Assuming they don't come back with a low ball offer, I think you should 100%, I think you should take it with a few asterisks. But yeah, the thing that was the biggest life-changing thing for my business about having that job is like, now that I had my bills paid, I didn't have to say yes to shitty projects. And I think that that's, like I say, that desperation is the sabotager for freelancers. Like when you don't control your lead flow and you're just hoping and praying for the next project, you have no savings, you have no buffer, like you are going to be desperate. There's no way around it. It's all well and good for W Freelancing to say, hey, you should raise your rates. But like, if you have no options except this one person, you want to get that client. Like it's either you get the client or you drive on Uber, you're going to do whatever the fuck you can to get that client. And so by getting that job, I eliminated that. And prior to the job, I always felt like I had to be finishing projects ASAP and getting them out the door so I could get another client, because I always needed to be finishing projects, getting more money in my pocket. And I didn't do a very good job on my work. I did like a good enough job. When I got that day job paying my bills, I was like, okay, I'm going to do the absolute best work I can for every client who I work with. And I'm not going to work with clients who seem like bad clients. And that was the turnaround for me. And the job wasn't that interesting, but I wasn't a very good developer when I started, and I was a much better developer when I ended, even though most of my work was literally just copying and pasting HTML. Anyway, what was really cool about being there is that I had been a solopreneur the whole time, and I was never surrounded with people who were better than me. And being at this job, there was like a senior developer who was really, really smart. Like, I remember when I applied for this job, I wrote like that I was knowledgeable about Java on my application. He's like, do you mean Java or JavaScript? And I was like, oh, are they not the same thing? Really, what I knew was how to like use jQuery plugins with no code. So I went from that to ending it. Like, I think when I quit, I knew some PHP. I had built out some stuff in Kentico, which is this stupid C# CMS that they use. Knew a lot about how agencies run, knew a lot about code. Like, it was really, really good. The things that I think the best day jobs have are the ability for you to be like a consultant within your job. And that's what my job didn't really have. It had a little bit of it, but at the end of the day, they were like, dude, you're here to code. You're not here to like transform the business. You're here to copy and paste HTML into these HP emails. That is what you are here for. And so they didn't really want me to do other stuff. But what I thought was really cool about like my podcast interview with Jesse Hanley from Bento, and others, is that when Jesse got his early job, he was the like everything marketing person. He could grow his skills in kind of whatever way he wanted. He was empowered to bring value to the business in whatever way he wanted. He had the scope that he was hired for, but it was a small, lean, agile business, and he could help in other ways. And what is getting me excited about this thing you're talking about is it sounds like it's the same. You're being hired to be the affiliate manager, but you're free to like add value wherever you want. And that is so cool. So that's kind of my main segue here that I have in my notes of what I want to talk about. I believe that when making a decision about whether or not a job makes sense versus pushing forward freelancing, at different stages of your freelancing business, you need different things. In the early stages, the thing that you need the most is the ability to, number one, get good if you're not already. Like, if you suck at your craft or you're mediocre at your craft, you need to get better at your craft. So in this case, your craft is now affiliate management. Previously, your exploratory craft was video editing. So if you're listening and you're a developer, your craft is being a developer or whatever. That's like one thing that early stage freelancers need. Another thing that early stage freelancers need is time to spend consistently either building marketing assets or business assets and like thought leadership and things like this. So really what you need is skills and then time to invest into assets. And most freelancers, because they are charging like low rates because they don't have any demand, they have to work so many hours that they don't really get a chance to build business assets. And the work that they're taking is all across the board because they're not being targeted with their marketing. And thus they're not really actually building skills either. They're building a bunch of different skills a little bit at a time versus one specific skill a lot at a time. And it's a lot easier to build like a targeted skill than a smattering of random ones. And so if we're saying that's an early stage goal, along with, of course, getting the bills paid, the job ticks both of these boxes, this one that we're talking about. Another thing that I think is really important, though, when I worked at that marketing agency, they typically had a no moonlighting policy. So I was the only person who worked there that was allowed to do like a side hustle freelancing. And that, when I went in for the interview and stuff, like that was non-negotiable because I had an existing business. I'd been in business by then for, like 4 or 5 years. I had clients I was servicing. I had projects come my way every so often. Like I was not willing. I was taking this job just because I couldn't afford to pay my bills and I didn't like my work. So I was doing this to get the buffer, but I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I knew that this job was like not my forever job. It was just a thing to pay the bills while I did my business on the side. So the way that I negotiated the job was that I was working 30 hours a week. And my like routine when working the job is that every single day I would wake up early in the morning, because I was young and in my 20s and had limitless drive and energy. And I also was hungry. I did not like living in Greeley. I really wanted to get out of Greeley. So I would wake up at like 5 or 6, do my on the business work before I'd go to work. And then I'd go to that job at like 10 and then work there until 6 or something like that. So that would be one thing to write down, which in this case, I'm sure they're going to be fine with you, like side hustling, but just make sure it's a part of the contract that you are allowed to freelance, as long as it doesn't impact your work quality and stuff like that. Another thing that I have down is, I don't know what I meant by this. I wrote using this job as a consistent business basis. No idea what past Zach meant by that. So I'm just going to skip right over that one. But yeah, I would say that, like, the fundamental goals of the job thing, that these are all criteria. I want to share one idea for you before I dive into these. So where I think my day job could have been so much better is, and that I'm really excited for you, is if I could have, number one, used it as an experiment ground for content marketing. And then number two, seeing which of your marketing skills you can build within the business for the business. So what I mean by this is, like, when you get an affiliate for this company, you are building your technical skills, like you're honing your craft, but you're not really, you kind of are, but not really necessarily, maybe, asterisk, building marketing skills that will help Brad the freelancer. But there's an asterisk because maybe they will. Maybe there are plenty of good ways, like it's called strategic agency partnerships, like maybe all of these affiliate partnerships that you build for them, like maybe the process for that would actually be similar with freelancers or agencies. I don't know. But suppose you want to do like blueprint content marketing style stuff, and you want to have like a funnel, you do content on YouTube, push them to an opt-in, activate them, have them do a road mapping with you. Suppose that's your targeted marketing. It would be really cool if you could find a way to practice that for your job. Because then by the time you go to do it for yourself, it's like something you've already done before and gotten to play with. But that case study one sticks out to me as the huge opportunity. So if it were me, I would try to find a way where, like, because since it sounds like they're cool with you taking ownership and stuff, I would love it if they were cool with me being a face of the company in the sense that, like, I could write a blog post for their website and it was by Zach about WordPress security or whatever. In this case, you probably wouldn't talk about WordPress security because you're not knowledgeable about it, although you did say you're interested in it, so maybe you are. But yeah, being in a position where, like, you can represent the company in their marketing such that you can now create content for this company. That would be like one facet. But then the other facet would be, I'd want to see if they're cool with me, like, on my own podcast, talking about the stuff I've been working on at work and the results it's brought. Because that, to me, is the real superpower here. Because you're working with a company that's a cool company and doing great revenue and stuff. And, like, I think that the head designer, like Johnny Ives at Apple, I think he has his own, like, is it Johnny Ives? I don't know what his name is, but anyway, the head designer dude has his own, like, blog or podcast or something. And so if you can have this job be a source of content for you, that would be so cool. Like, with me doing CRO or something, if I were working a full-time job for Amazon, let's say running CRO for them, it'd be sick if on my podcast I could report on, like, what's working on CRO, what I tried this week, what the outcome was. I would love it if you could do something similar, like affiliate getting strategies that you employed there and the results of them. That'd be so cool. So yeah, so those are kind of all of my thoughts that I have floating around. To end this monologue, what things do you want to, like, zoom into a little more, ask questions about, that kind of thing?
Well, I love the sharing that this was a turning point for your freelance career, because that strikes me as the same sort of counterintuitive thing as when early on you told me that you wouldn't suggest raising your rates on Upwork and you would just try to get as many clients. Like, I was like, that's not what I expected you to say. Similarly, I didn't expect you to say that, being the representative of Double Your Freelancing and being a successful career freelancer, you would say that getting a day job was a turning point for your freelance career. That's really cool, and I immediately get what you mean.
And then
the other thing, sorry.
One thing I just want to clarify on that one is like, if you're listening and you're thinking about the same thing, I think that the reason I'm so excited for Brad here is that Brad is going to build skills through his job that'll benefit him. If we were talking about this, like, hey, Zach, I got offered a job as a pastry chef, but I don't want to do that long term, I would feel differently. But it's like, hey, I got a job offer doing the thing I want to do as a freelancer. I'm like, ooh, big thumbs up for that. So yeah, continue.
Wholeheartedly agree. And that's even more so than like the financial stability, which is great. But if I'm honest with myself, I would forego that. If it were a pastry chef situation, I wouldn't do it. But it's actually like, they're like, hey, I saw that you were like playing flight simulator games. We have this fighter jet that we'd love for you to fly if you want. It's just sitting here. We bought it, and it's,
no one's using it.
Yeah. And I'm like, that sounds awesome. There was a call where I was like, I feel like it's Christmas today because of the things
that's so cool.
Yeah. So it's a really, really good fit in that way. And the other thing was, in our pre-call, you mentioned your percentage of runway concept, and I was curious just to talk about like what that means and how you think about this stuff, I guess financially. But I love that.
Cool. So yeah,
the stuff you shared.
The problem with the air quotes American dream is that we culturally subscribe to awful, awful, awful spending habits. And it is the norm that people spend about as much as they make, or maybe a little bit more. Apparently, there's some stat that like, I think it's like 70% of Americans don't even have $500 in their savings account. It's like some insane number. Most people are literally living paycheck to paycheck. And I experience this when I drive around my parents' house in the suburbs, like upper middle class place, or maybe just normal middle class. I don't know. Homes are like 500 grand, 600 grand, something like that. And I remember seeing a for rent sign once on one of them. It was like $3,500 a month to rent this fucking suburban house. And I see the people living there and I see what kind of jobs they're working. And it's like, how can they afford that? Because for me, my opinion is that in order to, quote, afford something, you need to be able to pay, like, you need to have like 3x buffer minimum for you to be able to, quote, afford it. And I think that maybe the normal American definition is like, if I am earning $3,200 a month, I can afford this $3,200 rent. No, you cannot. So for me, when I talk about runway and stuff, like, in an ideal world, I would say, and this is easy for me to say as an expat, and I want to underline that, is like, my life is cheap. I don't live in the US. I don't have kids. I just have a cat. We do feed her raw food. Raw food is not cheap, but it is the thing. So that said, I would say a good minimum is that your monthly nut, so your rent, your bills, your food, your eating out habits, your entertainment, like all the shit you regularly buy should ideally cost less than half of what you make minimum, in my opinion. Because if it doesn't, if it costs more than half what you make, then that means that if it costs less than half, it means for every 1 month you worked, you get to not work for 1 month. If you do what most Americans do, then for every month you work, nothing. You get nothing. You just have to keep working forever. And if you lose your job, you're absolutely fucked. So there are a lot of different approaches to it. Like if you look into the FIRE movement, stands for financial independence, retire early, you can see some like uber strict budgeters there. If you read You Need a Budget, that's a software tool that has like a book around their MO. Ramit Sethi has a nice book called I Will Teach You to Be Rich. It's like his foundational stuff. Those are all good, like foundational money things. So I won't zoom into them much there today, because that's like a whole can of worms. But I would say on this runway thing, this financial thing, I think in terms of what you should get paid from a job versus what you can expect to charge freelancing, I feel like a lot of the time you kind of cut your hourly rate in half when you're working for a job versus freelancing, and it comes out the same. The math is not quite right. I don't think it's quite half. But the reason I say this is that when you are a freelancer, suppose you're billing out at like, let's say $50 an hour. For every hour that you work, you have to pay like 30% of your profit in tax. And so suppose that you can write off a lot of stuff. So it's like 15%, let's say, in tax right off the top. So of that $50 an hour, you're removing like $7 or whatever. So now you're down to $43 an hour. And then you also have to prospect. And prospecting, especially early days, takes probably, frankly, like a third of your time, or maybe a quarter of your time. So then we skim that off. So that brings your hourly rate down to like, let's say 35-ish, 32. And then you also have to like answer your emails and all these other things that are unpaid. And so before you know it, your actual hourly rate is about $25 an hour. So in my mind, if you can work at a job getting paid more than, say, I don't know, 60% of what you could easily get paid freelancing, it's like kind of like a no-brainer good deal in terms of what your effective hourly rate is going to be, assuming you don't have good lead flow. If you already, like when I was freelancing a lot as a web designer, I wasn't doing any prospecting. I was just coasting on word of mouth referrals. It wasn't sustainable. Like I had no control over it, but nonetheless, it was just a dude freelancing. So I was always turning away business and having a pipeline. And so in that case, I spent 0 hours prospecting and I had really high rates. But in your case, like when your alternative is cold outreach, Upwork, like doing all of these things that take a lot of time, I think that if you look at what you were charging per hour, freelancing as an affiliate manager, what you were easily charging, which I think you said before what you were charging for that. If they pay you, if they're going to come back and pay you more than 60% of that, I think it's, as I say, I think it's a no-brainer good deal for you. And you told me in the pre-interview, like the context of that call, I have a feeling they're going to come back to you giving you a no-brainer good deal. So yeah, in the runway thing, my thought is basically like, let's say they came back to you with like a not great offer or one that you had to think about. The way I would look at it is try not to get too attached to your hourly rate and try to look at like, what have you actually been earning a month? Like if you go look at October in your bank, how many dollars went into it that month? Because that's what you actually get paid. That divided by 120 or whatever, or sorry, 160, assuming you only work 40 hours a week. That divided by 160 is your actual hourly rate. What I did back in the day with my day job, like I told you, it was the most money I ever made. I felt like I was living like a fucking king. They were paying me like, it came out to like 60 or 70 grand a year. And I was like, oh my God, this is so much money. Cause I was just used to not even being able to afford my bills and overdrafting my account and getting charged money for having no money. That's like mind blowing. They're like, hey, you don't have enough money, so we're going to charge you $35 out of your no money. Stressful as fuck. Anyway, so in that case, I was getting paid about 6 grand a month. And my bills, I don't remember anymore what my bills were, so I can't speak to the runway thing there. But what I can speak to is like the way that I decided to quit, because I know this was something earlier that you said, is like, I like to lay out in advance my goals for the job and like what my threshold is for quitting. So back then I kept it simple and I said, once I'm making 6 grand a month from my freelancing, then I'll quit my job because I was getting paid 6 grand a month. So it seems simple. I think my bills were probably like, I don't know, a couple grand. Greeley wasn't very expensive back then. This was like 2015 or something, or 2014. And if I were to do it all over again, I probably wouldn't put the emphasis on the income. I would probably put it on something like leads coming from my content marketing. So like, because that, to me, the real power as a freelancer is owning your lead flow. If you know you can do blah, blah, blah thing or pay blah, blah, blah dollars and get blah, blah, blah clients, that is the superpower. If you build a funnel with paid acquisition and you know that you can spend $200 to get a client and that you could spend $2,000 to get 10 clients or $20,000 to get 100 clients, that is a fucking superpower. So I would probably set a threshold like that. Once my funnel is consistently bringing in enough leads to like bringing in 10 leads a month or 20 a month or whatever, then I'll quit my job or I'll put in my notice. Or once it's doing that and I have $20,000 in my savings account or whatever the things are, like the really good safety buffer, And I would also set the goals for the job, because in your case, like in my case, my job wasn't really helping me build my business. It was just paying the bills. Like, sure, it's nice to be a better developer, whatever. But in your case, your job will be making you a better business person and stuff. So it's a little bit different for you. But yeah, that bit about like runway and stuff, as I said, aim for less than half. And yeah, just be wary of like lifestyle creep. But I feel like maybe I'm not answering the question right. So maybe can you clarify with that question? Like, what do you want me to be speaking to on this runway topic?
No, I just wanted to hear you talk about it.
Okay.
One of the big gifts I've gotten from this whole experience is just realizing how finite things are. I mean, the way that you break down an hourly rate, like, that's what I noticed immediately when I joined this community. Was like, it was almost discouraging at first, because everybody was so, I felt like everybody was limited, but now I feel like, no, they're just acknowledging the truth, reality. Like, freelancers acknowledge, like, you know, when I was thinking about this, I was like, in reality, there really are only roughly 40 hours per week that you can give to anything work-wise. So like, one way of thinking about this, and I don't know if this is how you think about it, but like, if somebody's employing you, they're buying your 40 hours. And yeah, you can work 50 or 60, but like, not really, you know, as we saw a couple weeks ago when I was bottoming out and burnt out.
Yeah.
So realistically, you have about 40 hours to budget. And that's just something that I've gotten from, you know, the Toggle time tracking, and just hearing how all of you in this community, or all of us, since I'm in it now, I just think about time very differently. And I think about hours very differently. And I used to think optimistically that there was just like infinite hours, and there just isn't. You have to be very intentional about what you're going to spend your time on.
Yeah.
And I think that your runway stuff is another layer of that. Like, okay, you can say that you're making $50 an hour, but whether you acknowledge it or not, you're actually not making $50 an hour. You're making like 25 or 30 or whatever. And I think that's been just so helpful to me, coming from this like pie in the sky entrepreneur salesy world where everybody's talking about these ethereal numbers, and you've really grounded me in
and talking
reality.
about top line revenue too. That's the other thing, is like,
yeah,
you can, like, I'm contributing to it really. If you think about the 6 months, 6 figures, like we're talking about 100K gross, not 100K in your pocket. And there are plenty of 7-figure businesses that live month to month. I mean, Nicholas Cole's a great example. He said he left that business with $5,000, even if it was a multi 7-figure business. And there are plenty of low 6-figure businesses that are just spitting out profit and making way more than 7 or 8-figure businesses. So it's really important to think about this stuff. I have this like little metaphor for time that I think about. That's like, imagine if you had these 2 slot machines, or maybe in this case 4. Let's say you have 4 slot machines and you have a handful of tokens. 2 of them are blue, 2 of them are red. I haven't tried the metaphor in this way before, so we'll see if it works. The blue ones are dollar ones, and the red ones are like knowledge asset ones. And they're not really slot machines, they're more like just these magical machines. So you put in your token, you wait a certain amount of time, and then you get something out of it. You get like more tokens out of it. The small blue one, you can put your token in, and it gives you like 1.5 tokens after a short delay. The big blue one, you can put your token in, and it gives you like 20 tokens, but only after like a really fucking long time, and only sometimes you don't like really know if it's working. You just like got to put it in, and you keep putting them in. You're like, I don't know if it's working. It says it's working. Like the little light says it's on and working. And those are your like money ROI slot machine thingies. And then you've got the red ones that are the same, except with assets and stuff. Like you put your tokens into these, you get a little bit of knowledge immediately. You put your token into the other one, you get more knowledge. I don't think the exponential delayed return works for the knowledge ones. Maybe you just have one with the knowledge one, and maybe they're multicolored. Yeah, this is a terrible analogy. I feel like this needs to be cut. I can't do the 2 kinds. But what I'm getting at here, Brad, is that when you have time, if you're desperate for money, you have to spend that time to just get money immediately. And that's like Ubering, right? You spend an hour on Uber, you get your money from Uber, and you get to not starve. And so everyone's happy. But that time, it didn't build something that's going to pay you like $1 million in 10 years. And it also didn't build any knowledge assets. You just drove a car. You didn't maybe you got better at driving a car but you're not trying to be a race car driver or something. And probably your clients in Uber wouldn't appreciate if you were practicing that skill with them. And so that's kind of the relationship, whether it's taking on a certain type of client work as a freelancer, whether it's working a certain type of job, everything you do is either going to pay you off a little bit immediately, a huge amount long-term maybe, and it's either going to give you knowledge assets or it's not. And I think the sweet spot for any freelancer, any business owner, in a product-based business, and any employee is to find the intersection of giving you enough of those immediate payoff tokens that you get to save and invest, giving you enough of the exponential payoff tokens that you're hedged and you're not locked into this linear small payoff forever, but that you're putting the tokens in that exponential one, and you're not getting anything from now, but maybe you will in a decade. And also giving you the knowledge payoff. If a job, if a client, if a business can do all three of those, it's massive win, because you could do that indefinitely and build the life of your dreams. It's when you have to choose two of them or choose one of them, that's where the hard decisions happen. And in this case, when you're imagining this job, or in my case, if I'm imagining, say, taking on a pro bono project, if you run it through this little slot machine analogy, it becomes pretty clear if this thing is a distraction or if this thing moves you forward. And I think with this job you're looking at today, seems like it moves you forward. So yeah, I don't know if you find that metaphor helpful, but I know I went on a little side note, but I just wanted to share it because I've never shared it with anyone.
Yeah. The only other question I had was regarding the moonlighting thing, and again, I'm not, if I say yes, I'm not planning on I'm not trying to find my escape, I want to work for them and commit and all that stuff. I want to be a good employee, but I think once that stability kicks in, my creativity will come back and I will want to create products and do affiliate reviews and all that stuff. So how do you think about that? And that would be my last question regarding this.
Yeah, I think whenever pitching something that's not good news to a client or a boss, I always try to think of how I can frame it as a benefit or frame the compromise that I'm making, because I know I'm asking for a favor and I want to show that I'm putting myself out a little bit too. So in this case, it's never good news. I mean, you can reframe it, but if we're just looking at them buying your 40 hours, buying your primary attention, it's never good news to hear someone say, hey, I want to see other people and it's a benefit to you. It's not. It's only a benefit to you. So in this case, number one, you could think of how it actually is a benefit to the company. So if it's by me continuing to do this on the side, it's going to make me more effective at my job for you. If you can find a way to frame it that way, then it is a benefit to them. But as a rule, it probably isn't. So what I would be thinking about is how you can present it in a value forward way, just all this other stuff we've been talking about, open communication, how you can say, hey, my number one priority is to do this great job for you. And I want to give you my primary attention. You take the number one spot in my professional life. And I want to be really clear about that. But I also have this other stuff I want to do. My long-term goal is to run a blah, blah, blah kind of business. And I think it'd be good to tell them, and if you're saying my number one goal long-term is to run a product-based business. So for me, I want to make sure I'm building skills there. So my ideal world is that I give you my primary attention, but then on the side, I'll probably still want to be doing content marketing, maybe working with some clients. I have some existing clients. That's a good, nice little hack, is say I have existing clients who I want to be able to support, because no one's going to say not to do that. It would be unreasonable to say, hey, Zach, Brad, you should just tell all your past clients to saw it off and go find someone else. they could say it and they would be within their rights, but it's like something that people can latch onto and be like, yeah, sure, that's reasonable enough. So that would be one to throw out. And I would be thinking about it, and this is kind of what I did with my job back in the day, is like, if the job is framed around 30 hours a week. So like, suppose they come back at you, I'll use easy math numbers. So suppose they're like, hey, Brad, we want you to work for us full-time for $100,000 a year. I would say, cool. How about we do 30 hours a week for 75 grand a year? That would be like my counter proposal. That would be one way. Or if you want to keep that money, then probably you would indeed do 40 hours a week, but just make sure it's cool that nights and weekends you're doing your own thing. Because it is, if you do a 40-hour week thing, you will like, you'll just have to, it becomes more about like your time, and you have to make sure that you're, I don't know, it's tough because like when I was working for that agency, I was getting paid by the hour. So it was really clear. But I don't think I got paid for my lunch breaks. So I was essentially a freelancer working 30 hours a week there. Whereas when you're salary, it's not so much about you need to put in 40 hours a week as it's like you need to be here all the time, and sometimes more and sometimes less. So that one's kind of trickier. So yeah, I guess the thing is, it sounds a lot like last week. Like I don't have a good, here's what you got to do. I would just say like, make it clear you want to prioritize them. Make it clear you also want to be building a business on the side. Probably if you're wanting to do a product-based business primarily, then that's kind of easier for them because there will be, I don't know, if someone's working with clients on the side, client projects, like they vary, you know, like sometimes they're big, sometimes they're small, they distract you. Whereas if it's a product-based business, like if Brad's spending 5 hours a week making YouTube videos, or he's spending 5 hours a week working on his course or whatever, like it doesn't really matter because there's not craziness. Although when you do a launch, that's craziness and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. So I guess I don't really have a clear thing. I think the main thing I would say is that just tell them that you want to make them the priority, but tell them you also want to be, you know, growing your business and stuff. And I think like if you imagine the blogging thing, like could an employer ever say, no, you're not allowed to make your YouTube videos on the side? No, you're not allowed to grow an email list? Like that, I don't know if they can even do that. I think I've heard of it before. I think it's more like the clients thing is the bigger compete. So like, are you planning to be working with clients, or are you thinking you're just going to be like growing your email list?
Yeah, no. I mean, if I could replace my freelancing with this and then just be able to create content and products and courses and stuff on the side, that would be perfect for me. Like I don't really want to have more clients, to be honest. Like
okay,
I never really wanted to do an agency, so that would be kind
if you're
perfect.
sure, like if you're so sure that you never want to work with a client, then you don't have to mention it. But I think it would still be nice. If it were me, I would want to know whether or not the option was open. Yeah. And if that's the case, like you can also like, so you might mention, I want to be growing a business, probably moving towards a product-based business, see what they say, and be like, cool. And then just so I know, like, if I have a client reach out to me and saying, Brad, can you help me with this blah, blah, blah thing? And it doesn't conflict with me hitting my deadlines at work. Like, what's your thought on that? And just see what they say. And you can kind of leave it to them. Like for the things you don't care about, you can just leave it to them and do whatever they want. And for the things that are non-negotiable, like float it by them. That would be what I would do.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Sure. Well, I guess this is a good time to wrap up. Do you have any other cues before we go?
No, that was awesome.
Cool.
That's exactly what I was hoping for, just to get all your thoughts on that stuff. Took a lot of notes. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Send me an email once you have the proper combo. I really want to hear how it goes.
I will.
Cool. All right. Well, dear listener, that concludes today's 6 months to 6 figures. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a good review and like it and subscribe it and whatnot. And if you want to get coaching like this, you can check out the DYF Accelerator community, where you can do one-on-one 20-minute office hours with me live each week. If you want to learn more, it's at dyf.link/DYFA. And Brad, if they want to follow you, where's one place they should go right now?
thenomadbrad.com.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I will hit stop. We won't hang up. And goodbye, dear listener. Thanks for being here.